becoming more like Jesus. Here's our prayer for us today. How am I going to start our day? We're throwing off the old stuff. Colossians reminds us, throw off the old ways, the old desires. You're putting on what Christ has bought for you, love and kindness and humility. It's ours today as new creations in Him. So we're going to lift up a song of praise because He's
Carry down our prayer partners are going to come forward. If there is a need that you are facing today, it could be big or small, God cares. You can come forward and our prayer partners will just partner with you in faith and declare Jesus over your situation and bring it before Him. We can stand confident before Him knowing that we are loved, that we are His children, and that He loves us. Amen. So God, we just welcome your Spirit in this room. God, we welcome your presence. We ask that you would have your way, God. Have your way. Have your way, Jesus. Would you come? Oh, come, Spirit, come. You can have it, Lord. I'm desperate to know your heart. You're all that I want. You're all that I want. Spirit, come. Spirit, have your way, Jesus. We are desperate. How quickly you run. How close you really are. So I'll sing till my soul remembers. You're just an invitation away. Come, Spirit, come. You can have it all. Lord, I'm desperate to know your heart. You're all that I want. You're all that I want. Oh, Spirit, oh, Spirit, you can have it all. Lord, I'm desperate to know your heart. You're all that I want. You're all that I want. Holy Spirit, have Holy Spirit, this is your place. This is your space. Come and have your way. Holy Spirit, this is your place. This is your space. Come and have your way. Oh, Spirit, Holy Spirit, this is your place. This is your space. Come and have your way. Holy Spirit, this is your place. This is your space. Come and have your way. Come and have your way. Come and have your way. Come and have your
personal, like the people that you're sitting next to today at Christ Fellowship Everywhere, or the people that you drove into the room with today here in this place. Like, you can't sing praise to God and not also have a love for your spouse, your neighbor, your kids, the people you came to church with. It should literally transform us to be more loving. The more we love God, the more we love others. That's why that line of that song, which I so love, it says, lead me to those around me with love. Lead me to them with love. And this is true of our church. It's not just a lyric that we sing, but it is who we are. Like this week, church, we were over in the Gulf Coast of Florida with our partners, Convoy of Hope. By the way, Hope has a name. His name is Jesus. And we were bringing hope to Perry, Florida, working with our missions teams there, bringing in some relief, helping remove trees and limbs, and bringing resources and critical supplies and need that is there. So when we sing songs like, Lord, lead us to those around us in love, it's happening in the Gulf Coast of Florida, but it's also happening right here in our very lives. We should be, if we love God, some of the most loving and grace-filled people on the planet. That's what we should be, right? And so, here's what I want you to do. I want you to find just a couple people today before you have a seat and just tell them, we're going to be people of love. Come on, tell them, we're going to be people of love. Tell them that before you have a seat today. Welcome to Christ Fellowship. I'm glad you're here.
The most impactful thing that I got out of Journey was definitely taking the next steps and going into the Freedom Study. I was very curious of what the Freedom Study itself was, how you can be free from struggles within your past. You have a leader there at the table to help guide you. Not only do you build a relationship with that leader, you also build a relationship with the people who are sitting at the table with you. There's just been such a transformation in me. My faith is 100 million times more than it was before I started.
Come on, I love Janet's story. Her story, a lot like all of our stories, that we have found purpose and meaning through a class or a group or experience here at Christ Fellowship. It's why we're in this season and we're declaring it, that it all starts here. And what do we mean by it all starts here? Do we mean that all that purpose and all that freedom and all that faith that God has for you, it starts right now. It starts right here through some of our classes and groups. You heard Janet talk about freedom. We're going to be offering freedom here in a couple weeks. And if you've never taken our freedom study, our freedom course, you need to. And those of you that have taken it before, if you're like me, you've taken it again. And so we encourage you to jump into that. We've got other classes like Foundations of Faith. Some of you, you're looking to build onto your faith. Well, I encourage you to stop by one of our Connect areas after church today. Look at some of those open classes and groups. You see some people wearing these blue shirts that say groups. Here's what we know. What happens in rows is pretty incredible on Sunday morning. But there's something that happens when we group up together. So we encourage you to take that step right after service. Some of you are like, man, I'm just checking this place out. Well, we are glad you're here. There's actually a Connect card in one of the seat pockets in front of you. Take a moment today, fill that card out. You can give it to any one of our volunteers wearing a lanyard, or if you need to run, you can place it in one of those metal giving stations when you leave, or if you prefer, not a card or a conversation, but just a text. You can text the word info to 441-441 and check out all the different opportunities and resources that we have for you as a church there. One of my favorite things to do every weekend as your campus pastor is just to take a moment to remind us of the importance and power behind our giving together. Giving is a form of worship. Some of us, we get more excited about opening our mouths for God than we often do about opening our money to God. In fact, this is sometimes called the cringe moment in church, when the pastor starts talking about money. But you know, the Bible has a lot to say about money and generosity. Here's what Paul says about it. He says this in 2 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 7. He says that each one of us should decide what gift to give from our hearts. We make a decision to give from our hearts, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. This is what I know to be true, Skip, is that our giving is not just a state of money, and it's more than even a state of mind. Our giving is a condition of our heart. And that there should be something that transpires in our heart that allows us to give generously and cheerfully. And I don't know about you, but I love to give. We're months away from Christmas, and I'm already planning Christmas gifts for my wife. Like, you know what I'm saying? Because I love to give my wife gifts. There's something that happens inside of our hearts when we get a hold of gift giving and generosity, and this is what Paul points us to. And so I want to remind you, as just as excited as we are to give God praise, I want us to be encouraged and challenged in our hearts today to give generously, not reluctantly because we feel like we have to, or out of compulsion because we feel like we must, but cheerfully unto Him, knowing that every dollar we give is going to make a difference for Him on the Gulf Coast of Florida and right here in our neighborhoods as well. Let me pray for us through our time of giving. If you want to participate, there's some ways listed on the screen behind me, and then also those giving stations at all of our exits we lead today. Gracious Heavenly Father, we're thankful for the love of your Son, Jesus. Thank you that you have given so much to us that we can't help but give as an expression of who you are to a world that so needs you. And so we pray blessing on this offering today in Jesus' name. Amen and amen. Well, we are wrapping up our Form series, so help me as we welcome all of our campuses today for week number 4 of Form with our senior pastor. Come on.
Everybody joining us today at all of our locations. Good to have you with us. Everybody online. We gently welcome all the men and women of the United States Armed Forces. And before we jump into the teaching, I want to remind all the guys, Diesel is coming up, and if you haven't got your ticket, you need to get one. Gardens is already sold out, but you can join me and Jensen Franklin live on Friday night up at our Port St. Lucie campus. September 15th. It's going to be great. A church alive is worth the drive. So you may not be near PSL, but come on up and help us out at Port St. Lucie. It's going to be a great night that God speaks into the lives of men of our church. Well, today we're wrapping up our series on Formed. And this series is all about God shaping your life to look more and more like Jesus. And a key verse for our series that we've been reading every week is found in Romans chapter 8. Verse 29, and this is what it says. God knew what he was doing from the very beginning. He decided from the outset to shape the lives of those who love him, that's you and me, along the very same lines as the life of his Son. I want you to say this last sentence out loud with me wherever you are today. We see the original and intended shape of our lives there in him. This is a process, you might have heard it called discipleship. It's the process of becoming more like Jesus. And this is not something that you add on to your Christian life if you get around to it. It is the essence of what it means to be a follower of Jesus. We follow Jesus. Following Jesus is all about becoming more like Jesus. This isn't about a bunch of rules and regulations, do's and don'ts. This is about having this relationship where God shapes us to look more and be more like Jesus. Now, one of the word pictures that God gives us in the scriptures to help us understand this is God is the potter and we are the clay in his hands. He's shaping us. And I've got with me today my friend Graham. Graham is our resident potter, or at least he is the resident potter for this weekend. Very welcome, Graham. And just like Graham is able to press in and shape and form this clay and make it into what he needs it to be or wants it to be, so it is with our lives. When we put our lives into the hands of God, God will take us and shape us and make us into more than we can ever think or imagine. Because it says in Corinthians that no eye has seen, no ear has heard, no mind can imagine what God has in store for those who love him. And so God has great things in store for your life, but you've got to let him shape your life. Now, last week, Julie introduced us to what she referred to as lumpy. This was the lump of clay that got put in her hand when we went to a pottery making class, and it was the same looking lump of clay that got put into the hand of the instructor. And Julie said, imagine for just a moment that Lumpy has personality and desires and ambitions for his life. And so I decided to give a little face to Lumpy to help you get in there close so you can actually understand that Lumpy wants to be something great. Like in the shop, he sees all the other beautiful vases and bowls, and he's like, oh, maybe I can be shaped into something like that. But then he was putting Julie's hands. So good luck with that, right? I mean, I know that I turned out with an ashtray, but her bowl wasn't much bigger than my ashtray, is all I'm saying, right? So just as ridiculous as it it is to think about Lumpy having dreams and wanting to be remarkable, it is as ridiculous for you to think that your life is going to be shaped into anything remarkable if it's not in the right hands. If it's not in the hands of God, who's actually the master potter that can shape you and make it, you can't just put it in anybody's hands. You just can't put this in your own hands. You need to make sure your life is in God's hands. And let me encourage you to remain under the hand of God. A lot of times in life, we get to the point where we think we know better and we think we can remove ourselves from under God's hands. But if Graham pulls away from the clay begins to wobble and shake. And if he were working that thing out all the way and took his hands off of it, all of a sudden, whatever the bowl or the vase would become looking something like this right here. When the hands come off of it, you got to do. Some of you, your life is wobbling and shaking. There's a whole lot of shaking going on. You're wondering, what's going on? You need to get yourself back under the hand of God so that he can shape and mold your life into what it needs to be. Now, some of you are on the wheel, and God's shaping you, but you're allowing outside influences to step in and influence your life and mark your life, and things are happening that's actually destroying what God is trying to do because you're letting these outside influences shape you. And if you're not careful, you're going to turn out like an ashtray. And God's got more than this for you. To quote Julie from last week, don't be an ashtray. Turn to the person next to you and tell them, don't be an ashtray. Tell them. Be careful how you say that. Do you guys remember the WWJD bracelets? Do you all remember that? Who had one of those bracelets back in the day? Yeah. WWJD. It stood for, say it with me, what would Jesus do? Right. And it was to help us ask the question in circumstances and situations when we don't know what to do, what would Jesus do? But instead of it just being a hypothetical, out there somewhere kind of question, I want to drill down a little bit and make it a little more personal, a little bit more specific to you. So instead of WWJD, how about WWJDIHWH? Why? It's not quite as memorable, is it? But what that stands for is, what would Jesus do if he were you? What would Jesus do if he were you? What would he do in your job, in your relationships, in your family? How would Jesus talk to your wife or your husband? How would Jesus treat your kids or those co-workers? How would Jesus drive on I-95, Todd? How would he do that, right? If he were you, what would Jesus do? And that is really the question that you need to be asking yourself. Because remember, we're asking, what does it look like to be shaped into the image of Jesus, so much so that my life reflects what he is and who he is and what he would do? So several weeks back, as we were preparing for this series and I was praying about this weekend, I thought, well, Lord, I could go a lot of different directions with this question. What would Jesus do if he were you? I could talk about the power of forgiveness and how important it is to forgive those that have hurt or offended you. And if you don't, you'll walk around with that offense, and that will shake you. I can talk about serving others, because, man, Jesus, he was all about serving other people. I could talk about how you need to share your faith, because, man, Jesus, everywhere he went, he was telling people about God. And how will they know unless we tell them? And as I was praying about all of those options, I felt God just go, nah, that's not what I want to say to my people. And so when God does that to me, I'm like, okay, well, then what is it that you want to say? And as I was praying, God took me back to a scripture that Julie shared last week in our message from John chapter 15, where Jesus said, I am the vine, and you are the branches. And if you remain in me, you will bear much fruit. But apart from me, you can do nothing. And so I went back to that passage and I kept reading. And it goes on to say in verse 18, and this is where I want to focus on today. He says this. If the world hates you, keep in mind it hated me first. If you belong to the world, it would love you as its own. But as it is, you do not belong to the world. But I've actually chosen you out of the world. That's why the world hates you. Remember the words I spoke to you. No servant, mathetes, is greater than his master. So in this passage in John 15, I am the vine, you are the branches. Jesus is not only talking about our relationship with him, vine and branches, and our relationship with each other, that together we are the branches that make up this
new family tree, but he's also talking about our relationship with the world. And he says that if you're a follower of mine, you don't belong to the world. In fact, he says it a couple times over there to make sure you understand you're not of this world. He's actually called you out of this world. And then the night continues on, and you roll into John 17, just an hour or so after this was said. He's in the Garden of Gethsemane praying to the Father on the night that he was going to be betrayed. And guess who he's praying for? He's praying for us as his followers. And this is what he says in John 17. So this all goes together. He says, I have given them your word, and the world has hated them. For they are not of the world any more than I am of the world. Let that sink in. He's saying we're not to be of the world any more than he was of the world. My prayer is not, God, that you would take them out of the world, but that you would protect them from the evil one in the world. They are not of the world, even as much as I am not of it. So sanctify them by the truth. Your word is truth. As you sent me into the world, he says, I have sent them into the world. And to get this, he says, for them I sanctify myself, so that they too may be sanctified. That word sanctified means set apart. Not of the world, set apart from the world. And Jesus said, just as I was set apart from the world, I have set you apart from the world for a purpose. So repeatedly, Jesus is telling us, we as his followers are not to be of this world in the exact same way that he was not of this world. Okay, one more verse, and then we're going to unpack what this looks like as a follower of Jesus Christ. And this verse is where I've been living this week and being convicted this week. 1 John chapter 2, verse 15. Do not love the world or anything that's in the world. If anyone loves the world, love for the Father is not in them. For everything in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life, come not from the Father, but from the world. Let me stop right there. The lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. Basically, what that boils down to is every temptation or sin that you are ever going to have to face or deal with is one of those three things. Lust of the flesh is just that ravenous desire that we have for things that aren't always good for us, especially if we go after it in the wrong way. It could be sex. It's not just sexual things. When we hear that word lust, we think that, but it's just this desire. It could be alcohol. It could be food. It could be attention. It could be power. It could be control. Whatever it is, you just got to have it, right? Lust of the eyes are things you see, and you go, I got to get that. It's a covetousness spirit. Like you see something that somebody has on Instagram, you see the clothes they're wearing, you see the trip they have, and you're like, I got to get what they got. That's lust of the eyes. And then the pride of life is this authoritarian spirit that just says, I am my own person, I want to do what I want to do. And all the sins that we deal with are going to boil down to those three things. And he says, all of that is the world. And if you look around in the world today, you see all of that in the world, don't you? And don't you? Don't you? Yes. The world and its desires, though, all that stuff is going to pass away, but whoever does the will of God lives forever. So in this passage, Jesus is saying, and John is saying, in these two passages, love not the world, don't have anything to do with the world because you're not a part of the world. So what does that word world mean? Well, world can have multiple meanings and does. Just like words that you know have multiple meanings. Like I can pick up a rock, and that rock is a rock. Some of y'all got a rock on your finger. Others of you rock in a rocking chair, right? Or I can say, hey, you rock, right? So it can mean like multiple things. A ring on your finger is a ring. It's a piece of jewelry. It's also maybe a circle on the ground could be a ring, or I'll give you a ring. So world can mean multiple things. In the Bible, it means at least these three things. It means earth, it means humanity, and it means sin and sinfulness. It means earth, like the earth. In Romans chapter 1, it says, from the foundations of the world, of the creation of the world, God's glory has been on display. And then John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only son. And he's not talking about he so loved the rocks and the trees that he gave his only son. Humanity, he loves humanity. And then in these passages, the word cosmos there actually means sinfulness and sin and worldliness and worldly thoughts. So when John says do not love the world, he's not saying don't love humanity. And he's not saying don't appreciate the beauty of the earth that God's made. He's saying don't love the attitudes of the world. Don't love the philosophy of the world and the thinking of the world. That we are to remove ourselves from all of that because we are not of the world. We're followers of Jesus. And just like Jesus, let this sink in the same way that Jesus was not aligned with the philosophy or the thinking of the world, we are instructed not to align ourselves with the priorities and the values and what the world says is right and the world says you got to have or got to drive or got to wear. We're not to be anything like that, it says. Not to have anything in our lives. And all through Scripture, we see that. Maybe you've heard, we're to be in the world, but not of the world, right? We're not supposed to go live in a monastery somewhere on the side of the hill, although some of you with little kids, you'd like a week there. Come on, right? We live in the world. We got jobs. You got kids you're taking to school. You got neighbors. Every day we're being bombarded by the world and its values and its beliefs. But Jesus says right there in the middle of all that, don't let any of that get on you. You're not a part of the world. You're set apart from the world. One theologian defines the world, worldliness, as this. It's a system of ideas and values and practices and social norms. This is just what's the norm, that are organized around the sins of rebellion against God and the redefinition of good and evil. So let that sink in for a minute. It's the society, the culture, the norms, the values, the practices that are organized around these two sins of rebellion against God and the redefinition of good and evil. Now, those two sins, rebellion against God and the redefinition of good and evil, go all the way back to Genesis. When Adam and Eve decided they were going to eat of the fruit of the garden that God said don't eat, those two sins were right there. When they listened to the temptation, rebellion against God. We don't have to listen to God. We know what we want. We know what we need. We know what we like. And the redefinition of good and evil, well, it doesn't look bad. Why do you say it was bad? Do you really say it was bad? I don't know. I think it looks good. It tastes good. It looks like it's right for eating, so I'm going to eat some of that, right? And can I tell you, those two sins or temptations, rebellion against God, I know better than God, or I know what I need for my life, or God doesn't seem to care, or the redefinition of what's right and what's wrong, are the two temptations that you and I are going to have to wrestle to the ground every day in order to follow Jesus. Every day, right? Because you know, you deal with, man, I'm my own person. I got my own things to do. I got to work out. I know what I need. I know what I want. I know that God says this, but I kind of feel this. I know it says that sex is sacred between a man and a woman in marriage. But come on, right? I see what they're doing on The Bachelor. I know what they don't look like that. I know the Bible says don't lie or cheat or whatever, but man, I got to get ahead. I got to do what I got to do to get mine. And the world would say, yeah, go for it. Get you some, right? It's all good. But can I tell you, it's not all good? There's an old prophet in the Bible by the name of Isaiah. In Isaiah chapter 5, he says, woe to those who call evil good and good evil. Whoa, watch out for it. Watch out for when people call evil good, the things that are evil, we're going to call them good, and the things that are good, we're going to call them evil. A modern day prophet, A.W. Tozer, he said it this way. He said, the cause of all of our human miseries is a radical moral dislocation. We are radically dislocated from the morality that God has aligned for our life so that we can have life. See, God's ways are not there to restrict you or bind you up or you can't have any fun. Man, God is the author of life. He wants you to live life big time. He wants you to enjoy life to the fullest. But it's the things in this world that become the world tells you, oh, just have one more thing. It doesn't matter. Just go do that one thing. And all of a sudden, that one more thing becomes a ball and chain around your life that ruins your life. Well, just you sleep through your body, do what you want, sleep around. It doesn't matter. You be this, do that, try this, and all of a sudden, your body, what you take on, the soul ties, the things in your head, even physical ramifications of those things. Man, the ways of the world destroy. The ways of God, they bring life. See, what's sad is there was a time when people mostly agreed that God was the one that got to define what was right and just and good. Now we're being told that all of that, we discover the answer to that all inside here. Like whatever I feel is right, that's right. Woo, yeah, whatever's good for me, that's what's good. And we hear these mantras that the customer's always right and the voter knows what's best. And if it feels good, do it. Can I tell you, those are the mantras of humanism, of this world, that are not of the ways of God. To the point that what used to be condemned is now celebrated. And what used to be celebrated is now condemned. And if you don't celebrate what everybody else is celebrating, you get condemned. Because the ways of the world are opposite than the ways of God. So don't think it's strange. Jesus said, the world hated me, they're going to hate you too. Okay, get ready for it. It's what it goes with the theory. The wisdom of God is different than the wisdom of this world. And if you just look at what Jesus did, what would Jesus do? Just look at what he did. Everything he did was in direct opposition of what the world said was right. The world says, get what you want, and Jesus says it's more blessed to give than to receive. The world says an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, and if you go that route, everybody walks around toothless and blind. Jesus said, turn the other cheek. Bless those that persecute you. Pray for your enemies. Go the second mile. He was always pointing in a different direction than the ways of the world. Every parable that he taught us, the stories, just read them. He would tell us these stories to help us understand the kingdom of God that we are a part of that is different than the kingdom of this world. He would tell stories like the prodigal son or the unmerciful servant or the good Samaritan. All of them to tell you the ways of the world are different than my ways. Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, but yet that's happening every day in our culture, isn't it? You got people trying to tell us what's right, what's wrong is right. If you don't do this, you're crazy, and they parade it in the streets and try to shove it in our face. Listen, they can go parading all they want to, but I'm not believing anything they're selling because God's already said. Jesus said, if you're a follower, then you're not influenced by any of that. They may do whatever they do. They may say whatever they want to say. Can I tell you, back in the time of Jesus, it was just as pagan as it is today, and in some cities, worse. But even in that context, he said, you're not of the world. So you don't let their thinking or their philosophies, don't align yourself with them. The world may try to redefine sexuality. The world may have an ideation about gender identity. The world may have their philosophy on abortion. That none of those things do you align with the world on. Do you align with the Word of God on? You have to align yourself with Jesus. As a church, we're not bashing anybody. At Christ Fellowship, we love everybody. Because everybody's got some junk in their life they're trying to work through. So we're not judging anybody. We're not bashing anybody. But our somebody, Jesus, has already said what's right and wrong. He's already said what is the truth and what is a lie. So we don't have to talk about it because we see what God says here. The problem is, and this is what Paul says we need to watch out for, he says in Romans 12:2, don't copy the patterns, the thinking, the behavior of this world, but let God, what's that word? Transform you into a new person by changing the way you think. Then you can learn. You don't know it yet. You think you know what's right and wrong. You think you know the will of God. No, you don't know the will of God until you let God change your thinking. And if you still have worldly stinking thinking, you're never going to see and understand the will of God that's actually good and pleasing and perfect for your life. It's everything you want in your life. But the only way we don't conform to the patterns of the world is letting God change the way you think. And the only way you can change the way you think is you have to learn what God thinks. If all you learn is what someone on social media thinks, or what your favorite athlete or influencer or what friends think, you're not going to know what God thinks, and you're going to find yourself in life lost and wondering, why is my life ending up here? So you got to let God change the way you think. See, the problem, I think, with a lot of Christians is we have what I call Home Depot faith. Yeah, I love Home Depot. I love going to find stuff to do. It's do-it-yourself, DIY faith, do-it-yourself faith. It's a little bit of this and a little bit of that. I took up a little bit of this, I'm going to try a little bit of that. We go through the scriptures and go, I like the part about serving others and going over and helping the hurricane victims. Helping the orphans and feeding the homeless. Oh, that's good. Makes me feel good about myself, right? Being kind to others. But this whole thing about not sleeping with my boyfriend and girlfriend until I get married, What in the world? Is that really in the Bible? Does God really expect me not to go out and party and get wasted on Friday nights because it was a tough week? Does he really expect us not to look at pornography? Everybody's looking at pornography, so it's got to be, I know what I learned in sex ed class in school, and I know what the teacher said. Is God? Yes. The ways of the world are different. So we don't just take the scriptures we like and add in a little personal preference and a little anti-authoritarianism, don't tell me what to do, and a little consumerism, what's in it for me. My fear is that many people have a faith that doesn't look anything like Jesus. Because that's not the faith of Jesus. See, our temptation is not going to be, is it going to be Jesus or the world? That's not our temptation. Our temptation is going to be Jesus and the world. It is not going to be Jesus or the world. You're going to turn your back on Jesus. You're going to flip God off and go, Yeah, most of you are not going to do that. Some people will, but most people are not going to blatantly rebel against God. But most of us will be constantly tempted to take a little bit of Jesus and a little bit of the world. A little bit of Jesus and a little bit of the world, right? A little bit of Game of Thrones and then a little Bible study on the front room of heaven. A little clubbing on Friday night and a little bit of Jesus on Sunday morning, right? I'm going to put my left foot in and my left foot out. Left foot in, I'm going to shake y'all out. Hey, your faith is not the hokey pokey. Your faith is worth more than that. It's time to get all in, because here's the problem, guys. When you try to add in a little bit of impurities from the world into what God's trying to shape in your life, it's just messing everything up. Like all of a sudden now you've taken a little bit of what secularism says and what your friends say and what the world says is right, and you've messed up what God's trying to make. And so now God's got to get in there and, well, Graham, you're kind of pretending to be God. You've got to clean all that stuff that we make, but it slows down the process, right? We have to rid ourselves of those things, because what happens when we bring the world in, our life falls apart. We deal with the consequences of that. Romans 6:23 says the wages of sin is death. It goes on to say that the gift of God is eternal life. But notice it says there, the wages of sin. Not the wages for sin. The wages of sin. God doesn't pay you for sin. Sin pays you for sin. Galatians 6, look at this verse. Whoever sows to please their flesh from the, what's that word? From the flesh. From the flesh will reap destruction. It doesn't say that destruction is going to come from God. Don't blame God. God's not trying to give you back for anything. He loves you too much. So much so that he doesn't want you in anything that's going to bring destruction in your life. God doesn't pay you back for sin. Sin pays you back for sin. And sin always costs you more than you think it's going to cost. Sin takes you farther than you want to go and leaves you where you don't want to be. I heard one preacher say that sin isn't bad because it's forbidden. It's forbidden because it's bad. It's not like God saying, I want to restrict your life. It's like saying, I don't want your life to be screwed up. I got so much great things I want to do in your life. If you'll just follow me and stay in my way, I got exactly what He's the creator of life. So who better to know how for you to live an abundant life? And Jesus, who was fully human while he was fully God, he knows every struggle you're going through. Every temptation you have. He loves you. This Bible is not a book of laws written thousands of years ago. It is God's love letter to you as his child. Saying, child, I got more for you. He knows you better than you know you. He knows. He created you. He's not only the creator of heaven and earth, he's the creator of you, of your body, of your mind, of your sexuality, everything. He knows what you need. And so this book becomes this roadmap where Jesus says, I am the way. And if you follow me in my path, it's going to lead you to life. And Jesus gets specific in Matthew. He says it's a narrow way. It's a straight way. But when you walk in this way, it's going to bring you everything you want. As opposed to the broad way that everybody's on, just do what you want, do what feels good. Can I tell you that if you go with the flow, you won't end up where you want to go. You never do. So Jesus says, come follow me. Come follow me, and I'll show you what true life really is. One last verse, and then we'll spend some time praying and wrapping this up. This verse was a verse that my dad preached a lot. And I remember there were many times that this verse made it into a Sunday message. And it kind of became one of these life verses for me that I try to always keep in front of my mind and my heart. It's found in Luke 9:23 and 24. It's the words of Jesus. And this is what he says. He says, if any of you wants to be my follower, and that's what we're talking about, following Jesus. He says, you must give up your own way, take up your cross daily, and follow me. Because if you try to hang on to your life, you'll lose it. But if you give up your life for my sake and where I'm taking you, that's when you are going to, it says save it, but it actually means find it, right? So a couple of beautiful things in this passage. First, it's a choice. If any of you want to be my follower, it's open to everybody. Doesn't matter what you've done. Doesn't matter where you've been. Doesn't matter all the bad choices that you've made in your past. Today can be the day that you decide, I'm going to follow Jesus. I'm going to walk on this way. It's going to bring me life. And some of your days, today's going to be your day. We're going to pray in a minute. You're going to go, today's my day. I want to find life. I've been going my own way, and I just see I'm messing things up, and I need Jesus. If anybody wants to. But then he says, you've got to give up your way. To go my way, you've got to give up your way of thinking, your way of living, because I got a better way. I got the way that's actually going to bring life. And he says the way you do that is you're going to take up your cross daily. Now the cross in the day of Jesus was not a piece of jewelry that they wore around their neck. It was an instrument of death and destruction. And what he's saying there is your self-will and self-desires actually have to be put to, you have to put it to death. I have to put what Todd wants on a cross daily so that I can follow what God wants. Because my nature is just like your nature. It's to want to go in the opposite direction of what God's saying. I want this, but God's saying this. I want to do this, but God's saying, if you do, you're going to have consequences there. Why don't you do this? And then he says, if you try to save your life, you lose it. But if you lose your life and find it in Christ, that's when you find it. So what would Jesus do if he were you? He would not let what's going on in the world in 2023 get on him. He would let his light shine in the middle of the darkness. He would not allow the thoughts and patterns of this world to shape who he is. So we don't let those things shape us either. I have 3 words as we wrap up this series that I want you to write down. And by the way, if you're not writing notes, I would encourage you next week to come, like Tom here, with a pad and a pen. Or pull your phone out and take notes. Because you don't want to forget what God is trying to speak to you right now. God's trying to speak loud and clear. The Holy Spirit is speaking to you. And I don't care if you forget what Todd says. I don't want you to forget what God is saying to you in these moments. And so next week, come with a pen and paper. Man, let's lean into what the Lord is saying to us. Here's the 3 words I want you to think about for just a minute. Pray, obey, and stay. Pray, obey, and stay. First, pray. We're going to take a moment to pray. And ask the Lord, Lord, is there any place where I have adopted the mindset of this world? It may not even be sinful, but I've adopted the mindset of the world that I've got to have this to be happy. I've got to have this kind of car to be happy. I've got to have this kind of spouse to be happy. Or it is a mindset where I've adopted what people have said is right and wrong, and it's not the truth. And allow the Holy Spirit to speak to you. Pray, show me, Holy Spirit, where I've been colonized, where I've taken on the mindset of this world that I'm just passing through. This is not wrong. Second, obey. Now that is a word we don't like. We don't want to obey anybody. We're our own person, our own man, our own woman, no. But if you are a follower of Jesus, he is the authority in your life. And at some point, my friend, you've got to decide who is going to be the authority in your life. Is it going to be you? Or is it going to be Jesus? Is it going to be what the world says, or is it going to be what the Word says? And only you can make that decision. But once you make that decision, then we're going to get in line with what Jesus says. And we're going to obey what he says to do. We're going to walk in that way. Is there any place that you've been disobeying that you need to obey? And the third word is stay. And this goes back to John 15. Abide in me, remain in me, Jesus said. And I'll remain in you. You bear much fruit with your life. You need to stay on the wheel. You need to stay in the Word. You need to stay in places where you're going to grow spiritually, because there are some places that are more conducive to growth than others. You know what I mean? Like if you take a seed and you plant it out in Belle Glade, Anybody play? You put it out in the lake, then they're actually going to grow something great. But if you plant it on the beach in the middle of the sand, it ain't going to grow. You've got to plant yourself in places and stay in those places that you're going to grow. We have all of our classes coming up. We have groups starting right now. It is a rich environment that if you plant yourself in it, you will grow. So right after the service, you're going to head to the lobby. You're going to go, I need to sign up for something. I need some help. I want my life to flourish, and so I'm going to stay planted. This is all about staying close to Jesus. And staying close to Jesus is not a bunch of do's and don'ts and rules and regulations. It's about a relationship with Jesus. I thought about a picture that Julie showed years ago of the Australian outback and these big cattle ranches that are thousands and thousands of acres, and the cows don't wander off. There's no fences around these. They didn't build fences to try to hold the cows in. They actually just built watering holes. And by building the watering holes, the cows never would wander off very far because of the watering holes. I started thinking about this life with Jesus, and his way is not a fence that kind of constrains you. It's actually this watering hole that is a resource to you, that lets you flourish in life. You keep running back to because it's what God has for you and what he wants to do in you, man. It's life-giving. So I'm inviting you to the watering hole. I want your life to flourish in every single way. Would you bow your heads with me as we pray? And I'm going to start by just having this moment of silent prayer where I want you to ask the Lord, Lord, is there any place where I've adopted the thinking of the world and I've aligned myself with it, and I need to understand that and repent of that, and just listen to what he says to you. Might not even be sinful, but he's saying that's not what I have for you. You're chasing after the wrong thing. Come chase after me. You're prioritizing the wrong thing. Your time, your money, come chase after me. Lord Jesus, we thank you that you invite us into a deeper relationship with you to the point that it shapes and forms our life and builds our life on a firm foundation that will not be shaken. I pray for every one of us in this season, God, that this would be a season of spiritual growth and maturity and formation into the likeness of Jesus. With every head bowed, if you're here today, you would say, Todd, I need to get my life right with Jesus. I'm here today, but if you were honest, your life isn't where it needs to be. I'm going to pray this second prayer, and if you would say, Todd, include me in this prayer, that I surrender everything to Jesus right where you are. Would you raise your hand? That's it. Hold it up high. All across all the rooms, online, hold it up high. Keep it up high. This is your prayer. We're going to pray this together, but you pray it a little bit louder. Pray this after me. Say, Dear Lord Jesus, forgive me of my sin. Make me a new person. From the inside out, I want to live for you, and I'm going to follow you the best I know how for the rest of my life. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Amen. Hey, listen, let's give God praise and glory. I like to see, before we leave today, I want to make this one last declaration over you, that we're going to build a life on the foundation of Jesus Christ. Come on, let's worship together.
Come on, let's stand. I'm realigning my heart with his heart. Let's sing. I will build my life. I will build my life upon your love. It is the firm foundation. I will put my trust in
And then you, next week, those note takers, come on back, bring it back, bring down that notebook, be with us. Hey, next weekend too is Christine Kane. It's going to be an awesome weekend with Christine Kane. 10 a.m. Here's what I would encourage you to do. If you love Jesus, come to 8:30. If you love Jesus, come a little bit early. There's going to be plenty of room at 8:30 for you, 10 a.m. All right, you remember those bracelets, WWJD? Well, we made some that said if he were you, that you get to get on your way out today. So the people